Welcome back to TalkNorth.com. Thank you for listening. If you can, please download before you listen. It helps our business. I'd also like to thank our producer, Brandon Morton, and let you know if you'd like to sponsor this program or any of the programs on the network, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com.
Starsky. Oh, we're partners.
You're listening to Steven Strom on TalkNorth.com.
Never doubt a Patino in March. Welcome into the Strom Sports Show today. Steven Strom, TalkNorth.com. Big shout out to my producer, Brandon Morton. Jim Souhan on the website if you're looking to advertise with us. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is March, baby. What a unbelievable run here by the Minnesota Gophers. Recording on a Saturday today. Marcus Fuller coming in, checking in with us live in Chicago. He'll break down what's been going on, what has changed these last 3 weeks with the Minnesota Gophers, who look dead in the water after that Rutgers game, which I went to. I was just like, man, this team doesn't have it. Rutgers came out in the second half, outscored them by like 8 or 9 points, and the Gophers ended up skidding. And then the last 5 games, Amir Coffey, who's averaging 25 points a game. It started with Northwestern, then it went to Purdue, and now they go into the Big Ten tournament, and they beat a team in Penn State, who I think a lot of people that don't know the Big Ten will sit and smirk and kind of say, oh, Penn State. Look, Penn State's record does not reflect what they are. They have a good team. They're pretty well coached with Pat Chambers, and that's a Tier 1 win. And the way that Patino handled it going into the Big Ten tournament, I personally didn't like when he said, we don't have to win this game. We're set in stone. And then I ended up hearing yesterday on the post game when he was in the locker room after they beat Purdue, he said he was lying about that to get his team going. So whatever works, Richard, whatever works. You're doing the right thing right now as they're just fun. They're easy to cheer for right now. They're playing for their seniors. They're playing for Jordan Murphy, Dupree McBrayer. Those guys have definitely stepped up. But this is a team right now that could win the Big Ten tournament. And I don't care what anyone says right now. It's March. It's Patino. Amir Coffey's playing out of his mind. Jordan Murphy had a tremendous game yesterday. Why not? Why can't they beat Michigan? They lost them on a buzzer beat in Ann Arbor a few months ago. They shot the ball horribly at home against Michigan and lost by 9. This is the Big Ten tournament. You don't know what's going to happen. You're telling me the Gophers can't beat a Wisconsin who plays Michigan State today? And I personally don't think they can beat a Michigan State, but they can definitely beat Wisconsin. And at this point, like we said, they're playing for seeding. They are playing for seeding at this point. When I bring in Marcus, he'll talk about that, where they are right now. I think everyone kind of has them in a 7 through 10 range. It could move up maybe. I don't know. I think if they lose today, they're probably looking at an 8 or a 9, 8 versus 9 matchup, which would kind of stink because obviously after that 8-9 matchup, which is not going to be an easy game, you get the number 1 seed bearing UMBC doesn't upset Virginia, and I don't know if they're actually going to make the tournament this year. I don't know what's going on in the American East. But listen, you got to expect to play the 1 seed in that second round if you win one, so we'll keep an eye on that. But hey, what a comeback. I mean, seriously, this has been Patino's career at Minnesota was on the line these last few weeks. And the way that he's handled everything, and he's found rotations that have worked. Either if that's Matt Stockman, and he's provided a tremendous spark, the 7-footer who's actually going through some concussion-like tests tonight, or it was last night, so we'll see if he plays today. He's brought a spark. Brock Stull has brought a spark. I mean, he's found rotations right now, and I think the common denominator, and I don't like to do this, but the common denominator right now is that Isaiah Washington is not playing, and I like him. I think he has a lot of potential, but right now they cannot play him, and they haven't, and Patino has not played him, and they've really been hot these last 5 games and have showed that they can win a game or two. I'm not saying that the Gophers are an Elite 8 team, okay? I'm not saying they're a Final Four team, but they can win a game or two. They can definitely win a game or two. They've got pieces where you can say, okay, like they've got a pro in Jordan Murphy. They probably have a pro in Amir Coffey. He's certainly playing like a pro right now. They've got pieces here to make a run. And they've done it right now in the Big Ten tournament. I want to shift to this really quickly, though. You talk about, and this was the biggest thing with college coaches, and I think you would probably agree that over 60% of college coaching is recruiting. And the reason why I wanted to stick with Richard Pitino, even after this year, is that you have to give a guy a certain window. Okay, if you let him go 2 years in and he doesn't have a good record and you fire him, well, then you're just restarting the whole process over. If he gets the recruits like Pitino has done here, you need to let him ride. You got to let it ride. You have to. What are you going to fire him after this year and let Gabe Kouscher and Daniel Oturu, two promising freshmen, and give them a new coach by their sophomore year? They didn't just come here to play for Minnesota. They came to play for Richard Pitino. And if you screw that mojo up, they could transfer. So this is my point here. It's one thing to be able to recruit these guys, and he's done a tremendous job keeping a guy like Amir Coffey in state, a 4-star recruit who had offers from Arizona and Michigan State. That's tremendous. Tremendous job by getting Daniel Oturu, Jarvis Omersa, and Gabe Kouscher to this team and recruiting them. But it's a whole other game getting an impact by their freshman year, and they are doing that. Daniel Oturu is doing that. He is an impact player. Gabe Kouscher is doing that. He has been tremendous. Both of them got snubbed. Daniel Oturu, especially on the All-Big Ten freshman team. You look at yesterday, they get a huge lift from their Minnesotans in Friday's win over Purdue. Amir Coffey, Daniel Oturu, Gabe Kouscher, they combined for 45 points on 17 for 30 shooting. I mean, that is tremendous. It's one thing to recruit these guys. It's another thing to get an impact so early on as Murphy goes for 27, Oturu goes for 13 and 10, Coffey goes for 21 and 3, which is pretty much expected by now because he is just on a tear. And I love the new hair. He braided his hair. It's pretty nice. And Gabe Kouscher with 11 points yesterday, 3 for 5 from 3. I mean, look, if Kouscher can stretch the floor, and, I don't want to sound, and I don't think I'm sound delusional, but they can beat some teams here if you get those balanced amount of scoring. They put up 75 points, which I don't know how realistic that is in the tournament because I know it's a new game, but they can beat some teams here. Minnesota, I mean, they've really proved a lot of people wrong, including myself, because usually when the tough times get going for these teams, and it's not just the Gophers, it's every team in Minnesota, they fold. And this team has completely risen. And I don't know if it's the whole narrative that no one talks about them, and I do believe that every team needs some type of motivation or inspiration to get to a certain goal or a point. I think right now, it's that nobody talks about them. Nobody, Minnesota, really? Richard Pitino, Amir Coffey, they're nice players, nothing big. And I think that they've carried that. And I think that they've wrote that on the wall. And they've completely played with a chip on their shoulder. And I think that's what you need at this point. You need motivation. If you're Purdue, you're in. You're sitting there, you're 13th in the country, you're 23-9. What's the motivation? You're in. For the Gophers, you got something to play for. And that's why I almost liked that they were on somewhat of the bubble. They needed to win against Penn State. I know a lot of people think, they were in. Look, you losing to Penn State, and St. Mary's just beat Gonzaga, so they're going to steal an at-large bid? I don't know. You don't know. They needed to win that game, and that was a tremendous, tough-fought game against a tough team in Penn State, and they were down. They were down. I did not think they were going to win that Penn State game, but they did. And even yesterday, I said, okay, all right, the Penn State game, they're in. They get down. I actually texted Amir's dad, Richard, and said, look, if the Gophers go down 15-plus in the second half, I hope Coach P, he really does consider just resting Jordan and Amir and Dupree because they need those guys for the NCAA tournament if they're looking to win a game. Boy, do I feel like an idiot. They completely came out. They outscored them 42-39 in the first. You thought that maybe Purdue was going to make a run. They did towards the end of the game, and it was all about responding. All about responding. And they didn't even shoot the ball well from the free throw line, to be honest with you. 16 of 21, 76%. That usually doesn't win games for the Gophers. There's a lot of games you look back on and you say, well, they should have won this game, but they shot this from the free throw line. 10-point underdogs yesterday. 9 today. What's it going to be for this Minnesota Gopher team? Marcus Fuller, he's up next. And live from Chicago, we are joined by Marcus Fuller of the Star Tribune. He covers the Gopher basketball team, and there is no better time to have him on right now. And we appreciate him, and I know everything's busy right now. These last few days have been awesome as a Gopher fan, but I know it's busy as a journalist. Marcus, how are you? Thank you so much for giving me the time.
No problem. How are you doing?
Everything's good, man. I mean, this has been I first want to get into this. 3 weeks ago, I actually sent you a picture of me at the Rutgers game, and you were there, obviously, and they ended up losing that game. And I think a lot of fans, and including myself, maybe counted out this team. What has changed these last 3 weeks leading up to this Michigan game?
Well, for one, Amir Coffey, right? I think, you look at the way Amir played this year. I know the Nebraska win doesn't really count for much now. Well, actually, they've been playing pretty well in the Big Ten tournament, but obviously they're not going to make the NCAA tournament or maybe even the NIT. But, the Nebraska win just showed you the potential of Amir Coffey. I think he had 32 in that game in early December, and you really saw, a guy carry the Gophers, put the team on his back to a big win at the time. But you really didn't see it too often, maybe the Rutgers game at home, but you really didn't see it too often or consistently enough for the majority of the Big Ten season until the very end. And after that Rutgers game, I felt like, he put it in his mind that if this team is going to get to where it needs to be, which is obviously an NCAA tournament at large bid, that he needed to play like he was capable of playing, and he showed in those games versus Rutgers at home and Nebraska at home. And, the Northwestern game, obviously, was the first game where, he really, really, I think, showed that potential again.
Yep.
And, it just carried on from there. So when you have a player like that, when it's March, just give him the ball and have him make plays. I think that, if you see whether it's Steph Curry back with Davis and, obviously some of the great Big Ten teams, like Michigan State, Mateen Cleaves, and, you just need a player in March that's going to carry you. And with him playing the way he is right now, 5 straight 20-point games, there's no telling how far the Gophers can go. I mean, you can't count them out versus Michigan in the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament. You can't count them out when they play anybody in the Big Ten, in the NCAA tournament. They could make a run. And now it's not all about Amir. He needs help. And, I think that's one of the main reasons why they lost to Maryland, is because he didn't get much help. And you're seeing Jordan Murphy obviously come alive in the last game versus Purdue. You're seeing Daniel Turu and Gabe Kalsher, if they're not scoring, they're helping the team in other areas. He's really leaning heavily on his starters right now, and they're delivering.
Yeah, 100%. And as you said, Amir Coffey averaging 25 points in his last 5 games have really come on towards the end of the season. And it starts with him. And we actually did talk about this in sort of the middle of the year. We said that Amir needs to be the guy to carry this team and kind of set the tone. I want to shift to Jordan Murphy, who just had an unbelievable game yesterday. And this isn't to take away anything from Amir, Gabe, or Daniel Turu, because they've been playing great, and Dupree McBrayer. But yesterday it was about Jordan Murphy, I thought, and his ability. He is such an underrated passer, Marcus. I mean, it is very hard to pass out of the post like that because Purdue sends a double. He's able to dump it off to Oturu or pass out of double teams. He's a tremendous rebounder, and you saw his ability to finish at the rim. Talk about Jordan Murphy yesterday and how good he was.
Well, Jordan, we all know how unbelievable he is. One of the all-time rebounders that in college basketball and in Big Ten history. Just forget about the Gopher history, and we're talking about like one of the best rebounders that's ever played college basketball. But I think offensively, this year was really where you kind of, scratch your head at times, thinking, okay,